If you would take your seats, we're just about ready to get started. Before I introduce our guests for this evening's program, I want to draw your attention to some of the items in our collection here at the Liberty Grove Historical Society that are related to Rowley's Bay and to the Rogers family in particular. We have the Rogers store ledgers. Come up and take a look up here if you haven't already done that. There also is a Rowley's Bay school register. Some of the names are going to sound very familiar to you, families that have been here for a very long time. These have their home in our Log House Museum, so if you don't see them tonight and want to take another look, visit us at the Log House Museum. There is also a box end that we have that has been stamped with S.A. Rogers. It is also in the Log House Museum, and you can take a look at it there. Here in the barn, I know that you've noticed the big buggy that is over there. That buggy belonged to Dr. Reuben Bloy. Now, he was a former Union Army surgeon and the first doctor of Rowley's Bay. S.A. Rogers' wife, Julia, he was S.A. Rogers' wife, Julia's father. Did I get that right? Thanks. On the grounds, we have a replica of Father Andre's cross. Father Andre was an early Catholic missionary who ministered to the native peoples of Door County in the 1670s. At that time, he erected a cross at the north point of today's Rowley's Bay as a place of worship and as a reminder to his 500 converts of their Christian faith and duties. Large crosses served as billboards visible along canoe routes to reinforce missionary teachings. More than 200 years later, in 1979, a reproduction of the cross that stood on the shore of Rowley's Bay until about 1870 was made from a beam from S.A. Rogers' 100-year-old barn and erected at the Wagon Trail Resort on the South Shore. An outhouse, now located near the summer kitchen on our property, was located behind one of the old cottages at Wagon Trail Resort, now Rowley's Bay Resort. It dates back to the early 1900s and still has its original seats. Yes, seats. It's a two-seater. I can't even imagine. Let me introduce to you our speakers for this evening. First off is Myron. Myron grew up in Ellison Bay and attended Ellison Bay Grade School and graduated from Gibraltar High School in 1963. He attended Colorado State University, graduating in 1968 with a degree in animal production. He worked 6 summers as a ranger in Peninsula State Park at that time as well. After graduation, Myron moved to Alberta, Canada. My goodness, where he worked on 2 cattle ranches for a time. Returning to Wisconsin in 1970, he began a career with an artificial insemination cooperative, later becoming a district sales manager. Myron became interested in photography while in college and studied it during his times of employment. Then in 1975, he left his job to work as a part-time veterinary assistant. He was renting the basement of an old mortuary and started a photography studio. While the vet job didn't work out, the studio and custom framing business went quite well. In 1995, Myron closed the business and moved back to Door County. He took a job as a framer in an art gallery in Ephraim. Myron fell in love with and married another employee, Anne. They share 6 children and 6 beautiful grandchildren. The owner of the gallery passed away in 2007, and Myron and Ann started Cottage Row Gallery in Fish Creek. The gallery closed in 2023 when they retired. When Myron's parents passed away, several boxes of old photos were found. He became interested in preserving the photos and sharing them with anyone interested, and he finds the history very fascinating. With Myron tonight, we have his sister, Jill. This evening, Myron's sister, Jill Hines, also grew up in Ellison Bay, following in her big brother's footsteps. She says that he was very patient with her pestering. It's a good big brother, Myron. Myron instilled his love of horses in Jill, and they continue to be a part of her life to this day. She shares that they were fortunate to grow up on the farm on Ranch Lane, and that her parents provided them with an ideal childhood. Graduating from Gibraltar in 1972, Jill earned a degree in education with a major in history and minors in English and Scandinavian area studies from UW-Eau Claire. She spent a semester in Denmark, which she considered a highlight of her college years. She later received her master's in education from UW Stevens Point. Jill started teaching in Nakusa High School in 1977, teaching both English and history there for 34 years. Congratulations and thank you for your service. Summers were spent in Ellison Bay and traveling. She married her husband, Dennis, also a teacher, in 1992, and they live in a small hobby farm near the Wisconsin Rapids. They retired from teaching in 2011 and now enjoy spending time with their dogs and their remaining horse. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Jill and Myron.
Evening. If I look scared, I am. I haven't talked in front of a group for a long time. I want to thank everybody for, I don't know if I can read this. Is there a possibility of getting more light up here? I'll try. Anyway, first thing, oh there, that's good. Can you still? Better off if you go off and use that. I mean, the pictures aren't going to be very good. Just, I'll make it here.
Okay.
Yeah. Should be coming down there. Okay. And it's obvious that I don't know what I'm doing.
You're doing fine, Myron.
There we go. I think, is it?
Here, you need a little light?
There we go. Is the mic working?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. First, I just wanted to thank the Society for all you've done up here. Ellison Bay is a pretty special place to us. And to manage to save the property and the heritage and everything, I just think is a wonderful thing. And I'm very happy to be here. If anybody has questions, that's just fine. Anytime, just raise your hand or whatever. I may not hear you. So if I give you a real stupid answer, try again and we'll go to Jill. We started out, I'm okay, Carrie, thank you.
Sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
We started out talking about, I'm going to go back as far as I can go and then work my way to today. I'm going to start with Dr. Reuben Blois. We just talked about him with the carriage out there. He was our great-great-grandfather. He served in the Union Army as a surgeon during the Civil War. There's a document. Is it coming up? Okay. Yeah, that on the screen is a contract between him and the U.S. Army. He is to proceed to Little Rock, Arkansas, and will be compensated at the rate of $100 a month. And if it's combat duty, he got $113 per month. There's also a letter from Abraham Lincoln to Dr. Blois thanking him for his services. That letter disappeared. It was lost somehow or removed from my grandfather's safe. Carrie, give me your light.
You need the light?
Or else I can go over this stuff afterward. Let's leave it go. Okay. This is the sash off his uniform. There's some other artifacts here and stuff. I'm going to let most of this stuff go until after we're done talking, and then we can show you some of these things. Yeah. Dr. Blois' wife, Meletta, passed away in 1876. He moved to Door County in 1881 and set up Northern Door's first doctor's office. Most of his services were provided in the patients' homes, which required a considerable amount of travel. Many of the settlers at the time oh, don't mention senators. Settlers of the time lacked the money for a horse, so routine errands were taken care of on foot. Dr. Bloy would encounter these walkers, feel obliged to offer them rides. This resulted in his horse getting very tired and slowed down his rounds. He solved the problem by having this buggy, that's the old buggy standing right out there. It was custom built, so he was unable to take on any passengers. Him and him alone. And I want to just mention that Russell and Virginia Hanson, that had this property, also had the foresight to buy that carriage and maintain it for us, which I was very thankful for. Next up, and most interesting, is Samuel Ashbel Rogers, S.A. Rogers, I'll call him. S.A. and his wife Julia had 7 kids. Harriet, Mary, Jay, our grandfather, Samuel, Julia, Asa, and Edgar. He moved the family from his home. You got them all?
Yep.
Okay. He moved the family from his home in New York to Rowley's Bay in 1876. The Rowley's Bay house was built in 1886. It was a large house with 16 rooms that also served as a boarding house. Okay. S.A. Rogers was a very adventurous businessman who engaged in real estate, farming, lumbering, and general merchandising. At various times, he had lumbering interests in New York, a grist mill in Missouri, farms in Indiana, Illinois, and Michigan, and property in Washington State. This is all in addition to what he had going on in Rowley's Bay. I'm going to just read you a section of, and I have one little exception to it, The History of Door County by H.R. Holland. This follows quite closely with my understanding of exactly how S.A. Rogers got here and developed his enterprises in Rowley's Bay. In 1876, S.A. Rogers arrived from New York. He had a farm in Illinois, which through the medium of a real estate agent, he traded for a vast acreage of land at Rowley's Bay. You get that up there. The way I heard it, he had a grist mill near St. Louis, and that he traded that actually on the train, sight unseen, for the property in Rowley's Bay. So either one works for me. That got him here anyway. Okay. Unfortunately, the land and water were mixed together after a somewhat haphazard formula, constituting a 4,000 acre tract of swamplands covered with a pretty good stand of cedar. Being a man of energy, Mr. Rogers built a large sawmill, which sometimes scaled a run of 7 or 8 million sawed feet of lumber in a season. Did I say million? Yes, 8 million feet. He built a commodious pier along which nearly always lay a vessel or two loading. He also built a store and other buildings for the accommodations of the growing business of the place. All this business was centered around the cedars, which were big enough to cut. But there were cedars too small even to make a fence post. Of what use were they? Well, in about 1885, a man was found who solved this puzzle. This was J.H. Matthews of Milwaukee, who understood the process of making cedar oil. He built a factory on the northeast coast side of Rowley's Bay, where he employed about 25 men. Cedar twigs were cut and placed in a tank, the dimension of which was 4 by 22 by 8, the top being convex. Okay, the steam from this tank was taken up into a 4-inch pipe, cooled and conducted through a succession of smaller pipes, zigzagged in the bed of a small spring-fed creek. After the stream had meandered for a distance of about 200 feet, it trickled into a receiving tank of cedar oil, which sold for $8 a gallon, which I think in those days was pretty good money. I picture this as just a giant moonshine still. I went over there a few weeks ago. I was able to find the creek, but the overgrowth behind the beach is so dense I just couldn't even hardly walk through it. I don't know if you can see the map right here, but that cedar mill was right in this area. I believe that's Shandon's Road coming down there. Okay. Okay, the sawmill was built on the west side of Rowley's Bay. It produced large quantities of dimension lumber, cedar shingles, and railroad ties. Telephone poles, fence posts, and cordwood were also shipped out, as well as hemlock bark, which was used in the process of tanning leather. Moving the logs to the mill was challenging. Most of the work in the woods had to be done in the winter when the ground was frozen. Draft horses were used to skid the logs to the gathering area, where they were loaded on sleighs and hauled to the mill. On the east side of the bay, the logs were skidded to the shore and placed in a raft. Now, the raft was made up of logs chained end to end in a big circle, and then they'd fill that with loose logs. And this was fastened to the winch on this little scow. Can you show that? There we go. Okay. That little scow had a winch right up there with a cable on it. And what they would do is back that scow up to this ring of logs, hook it on with a chain, and then paddle or row or whatever they had to do with that little scow out until they hit the end of the cable. And then there's an anchor right down in the corner there. They'd anchor the scow, stand there and crank that big raft of wood, lumbers, logs, sometimes it was posts, all the way up to the raft or the scow, and then just repeat that over and over again until they got it back into the back of the bay back here where they could run them through the sawmill. In later years, the scow was replaced by this little tug and made life a lot easier. When ice conditions were safe, they were able to bring logs across on sleighs. I personally find that very scary, but they did that. My dad told about skidding logs with Philip Hugenroth. This involved one or the other of them having to drive the horse to the loading area, unhook the log, and drive the horse back for another log. After several trips, they realized that the horse already knew what was going on, and so they were able to just sit on one on each end of the trail, and the horse went back and forth all day. Okay, in the early spring, the schooners would begin to arrive for their cargoes of timber products. Local farm boys could see the ship best, and they would hurry down to the dock to help load the ships, and were paid quite well for that. They were able to move the product out on the dock with horses and wagons. I'm not sure how the materials transferred from the dock to the ship, but I can visualize men carrying heavy loads across a barely adequate gangplank. Okay, right over there, we'll show you that later. The lantern, can anybody see that? Okay. This is a lantern that was used to guide ships to the dock at night. It has what's called a Fresnel lens. It's like a lighthouse, and it can be seen from a very long distance. Either my grandfather or great-grandfather would go out there if they thought ships might be coming in the dark and put that lamp on the end of the dock. It was actually a common thing for ships to arrive at night. I mean, they came whenever they got there. And what I find amazing is I know that water pretty well, and it's just dotted with reefs over the opening into Rowley's Bay, but they'd come in at night and be waiting in the morning to unload or to load. Okay. I have 3 of his essays journals. And just to give you an idea of what his life was like, I'm going to read through a couple sections and just to give you an idea of what it was like being a guy like him, I guess. Okay. In September through into October 1878, okay, in the September 6th, they loaded bark. The 7th, he's at home waiting for fair wind, and I'm going to go kind of fast on these. 8, at home, wind ahead. 9, left at 11 p.m. on schooner. 10, on lake off Algoma, Sheboygan at night. 11, arrived Milwaukee, 7 a.m., unloaded bark. 12, Milwaukee, looked at boots and shoes. Now that would have been looking for merchandise to be sold in his store in Rowley's Bay, because he took a loaded ship down to Chicago and came back with supplies for the local farmers and whoever needed them. Okay, he left for Chicago. 13th in Chicago, left at 5:15 train for New York. 14th, he stopped in Toledo, on to Buffalo and left for Schenectady. 15th, he stayed in Schenectady with Baker. Now, there's a bunch of names. These would be people that managed his farms or his logging operations or whatever. So anyway, the 15th, he stayed with Baker. The 16th, he went visiting Sam, Mary, and others. Found the folks all well. So he did take a break and visit some of his family. The 17th, he went to Charlie's, stayed at night, not sure what that was about. 18th, went to Gates Rogers, stayed all night. See, these are also managers type people or business associates. On the 19th, he went to Schuylerville. He owned a house in Schuylerville. I was going to do some research on that house, but I just didn't get to it. The 20th, he went to Schuylerville. And on the 25th, he sold flour. Not sure what that was about, but he did deal in flour, obviously. 26th, he settled up for flour. 27th, left for home on a Saratoga steamer. 28th, left for Chicago on Erie Railroad. 29th, arrived Cleveland at night and went to Chicago. 30th, arrived in Chicago, settled bills, and left at night for Sturgeon Bay. The 2nd of October, he arrived in Sturgeon Bay, paid for paper, no idea what that meant, and then took the stage to Bailey's Harbor. And he walked home at night. He got there at 10:45. Folks were all well. Okay, one more. This is a little shorter. The March 31st, Belle of Racine arrived. Now, these are all ships. 1st of April, loaded first ship of season. Rob Roy arrived. 3rd, Tempest arrived at North Bay. Captain came to see me. 4th, Rob Roy's loading. Went to North Bay with a skiff. Now, that's a long way to row a skiff from Rowley's Bay. Got the Tempest and arrived home at 1 o'clock. The 5th, Rob Roy finished loading. Tempest came in. The 6th, loaded ties, bark, and wood. 7th, finished loading. 8th, started for Chicago at 6 a.m., headwind all day. The 9th, on the lake, light fair wind from the east. The 10th, just south of Sheboygan, the sea became very rough. Now, they carried a lot of the cargo on the deck of the ships. We lost the bark, arrived in Chicago at 7 p.m. So rough, this is the 11th, we did not go out. The 12th, bought goods and settled up bills. 13th, sold posts and wood, purchased goods. 14th, in Chicago. 16th, went to Racine in a snowstorm. 17th, went to Milwaukee. The 18th is on the boat. 19th, arrived home at 6 a.m. On the 20th, a vessel came. 21st, they loaded the vessel. 22nd, they loaded a vessel. 23rd, the Belle came. 24th, the Belle left. Then on the 26th is an entry. P.A. Hart came and looked over some land. Now there was, I believe, a Hart Steamship Company, and I don't have no idea, but I'm wondering if that wasn't something about land to build a dock for their ships. Okay, the 27th, the Mary B. Hale came and loaded wood. The 29th, got through loading. The 30th, the Bell came and loaded wood. Anyway, that's the way his life went. And I was thinking that the other day, and I thought, can you imagine today if you just had a computer, what you could have eliminated there? Okay. In about 1903, S.A. moved the family back to New York. There he purchased an historical piece of property known as Freeman's Farm. Now this goes back to the Revolution, to the Battle of Saratoga. There were 3 engagements in that battle. And the first and the bloodiest was fought on Freeman's Farm. And so that he owned that farm for a while. It's now a state historical park. His wife Julia passed away in 1914, and he returned to Rowley's Bay shortly afterward. Spent the rest of his life in the care of Jay and Hannah. He passed away in 1921. Now we're going to go to our grandfather, J.W. Rogers. Jay was born in Illinois on January 2nd, 1872. He was moved to Rowley's Bay in 1876 with the S.A. Rogers family. I believe that he received a degree in business from Valparaiso University in Indiana. In 1902, he kept over management of the Rowley's Bay operations. By this time, the store was winding down. The logging and sawmill were still operating, but on a smaller scale. Farming took on a much more significant role in the operation. Jay was a believer in the value of breeding high-quality livestock. His journal tells of several trips to purchase purebred Holstein bulls. My dad, Leland, tells of several trips to purchase, told of meeting a steamer in Ellison Bay to pick up a well-bred draft horse. Jay was very active in local government affairs. He was a chairman of the town of Liberty Grove for 23 years. He was known for his honesty and a sense of fairness. An example with this, he sold a lot of cordwood to local farmers and residents to burn. The racks that they were held in were 4 feet by 4 feet by 8 feet, a standard cord of wood. He would add an extra layer to the top to make up for the cracks in between. Okay, there. This is Jay with his 1938 Hudson. This is one of my few memories of him. And the memory was going for a ride with him in that car. He took a corner a little wide, ran up on a stone fence. He made me promise never to tell Grandma. He was close friends with an Indian known as Joe. And so I'm just talking about his relationship with the Indians, which was quite strong. He and my dad attended the funeral of Caquedos. He was born in the Peninsula State Park used to have a totem pole there. So they took part in that. Then they also were invited to a big powwow in Kashina. And Dad went with Jay to the Indian powwow there. There's an Indian burial ground somewhere in the area of Rowley's Bay. And the secret of its location died with Jay. He never would tell anybody where it was. There's Hannah. Hannah was our grandmother. She was the bond that held it all together. Jay was often away on the business of the town and the county boards for several days at a time. There was no shortage of companionship from spring through fall. They were hired help to feed and friends and family that often stayed for weeks. She welcomed the ferry passengers. The ferry used to dock at Rowley's Bay when the wind was suitable, or when they couldn't get into the Northport or Gills Rock docks. So she dealt with them, pointed out the best fishing spots for anglers. There were always fresh bread and rolls in 2 huge cookie jars, one with sugar cookies, the other with ginger snaps. She loved people and loved having fun with them. Winter was a different thing. Rowley's Bay was quite remote in those days. Any travel was often very difficult, and the wind off the lake could cut like a knife. I have several of her diaries, and just speak of boredom, loneliness, and persistent illness. Winters were tough. I knew her best during my high school years. After Jay's passing, she lived alone for 17 years in her house in Ellismano. That's the Savory Spoon building. They owned that for quite a few years. In the early 40s, they moved off the farm in Rowley's Bay. My grandma and grandpa did, and moved into that building. Okay. I knew her best during my high school years. After Jay's passing, she lived 17 years in her house in Ellison Bay. I'd get off the bus at the Viking and walk through her yard on my way home. I'd often stop to see if she needed anything, and mostly to have a cookie and a glass of milk. Then we'd visit for a while. She was an amateur photographer and gave me her camera and darkroom equipment. Now that's all sitting right over there. When you can get out the lights, you can see it better, but there's a developing powder and a fixer, and there's even a kerosene darkroom safe light. It's just quite a gal. She had told me about the Indians and how they would just appear in her kitchen. They were friendly, would want to trade for staples like flour and sugar or salt pork. Tobacco was also a popular item. For trade, they brought maple syrup and trinkets that were handmade. An Indian girl named Mary worked for Hannah, and she was a good helper, but when she got lonesome, for her family, they'd see her bob on the waves in her canoe heading for Mink River. Now, the Indians had an encampment on Mink River for many years, and finally they just got drove out, but they were quite good friends with my grandparents. Oh, and she beamed when she told me about the handsome young man who came to court her in his horse and buggy. She left home at a young age and went to work for her relatives in Chicago. She said that she especially loved to go out dancing there. She made a very close friend there, Mrs. Hanson. She came and stayed with Hannah for several weeks each summer. Hannah's brother Herman would occasionally stop by to visit. Excuse me, I missed this. Spend time with her. She was also close to a close friend of Emma Tuft, who would occasionally stop by to visit. Emma had boarded with them when she was a teacher at Rowley's Bay. Hannah was a devout Christian. I'd usually find her in her wooden rocker, either reading her Bible or listening to a Braves game. She was a big fan of Billy Bruton. Or she'd just be watching people go in and out of the post office, the building right next to her that used to be the Ellison Bay Post Office. This guy I'm going to talk about is not a direct Roger relation, but he's fits right in with, would be my Grandma Hannah's nephew. And he had a big part of the Rowley's Bay thing. Name was Harvey, but they called him Ole. He and his wife owned a fishing camp on the north end of Mink River. I remember him as a good-natured man with a fun sense of humor. I think that's on the picture. This is him and his wife, Kate. He had lost an arm, his left arm, in a hunting accident. I picked cherries with him and was amazed how he could stand on the top of a ladder and pick cherries faster than I could. Although that didn't take much. He was able to bait a hook with his one hand. And there was a ski jump in Ellison Bay at the time, right up where, I don't know if anybody even knows where that was, but it was on the Ellison Bay Hill. He would fill his left jacket pocket with lead sinkers. And then that balanced him enough so he could go off that jump kind of sideways. Had a lot of fun there, I guess. Now we'll go to Clinton. Clinton is my uncle. He's the eldest son of Jay and Hannah. He was born in 1907. He left Rowley's Bay as a young man and moved to Milwaukee. He was married. He had a daughter, Evelyn, who spent most of her life in Alaska. Daughters Mary and Karen were born to him, and his second wife, Marie. He purchased what was left of the farm in the early 40s when Jay became too ill to run it. Marie passed away a short time later. After this misfortune, Clinton sold the farm to Lou Casagrande. Both Mary and Karen stayed with us at various times. Clinton moved back to Milwaukee and focused on his trucking business. He later married Rowley, who had 2 sons, Don and Ron. Clinton and Rowley moved into Hannah's house after she passed away. They spent the duration of their lives in Ellison Bay. Next is Winfield. Winfield was born in 1912, the second son of Jay and Hannah. We spent most of our summer Sunday afternoons at Sand Bay. Around 2 o'clock, we'd hear the unmistakable sound of a Mercury outboard bouncing in a Lumacraft boat across the point from Rowley's Bay. That would be Uncle Win coming to water ski with us. As he rounded the point with his deep tan and snow-white hair, left no doubt as to who was in the boat. Winfield had a degree in electrical engineering, and he worked as a naval inspector in the area shipyards. He also had a shop in Sister Bay, where Secondhand Sue's is now. There he sold and repaired boats, motors, and other small engine items such as chainsaws and lawnmowers. His wife Vera attended the shop when he was away. Win and Vera had one daughter, Kay. Sadly, she recently passed away after a long-term battle with cancer. She was excited about this program and had planned to help. When I told her about it, she said that she would tell her story about how she would go to the barn when Uncle Lee was milking and he would squirt milk at her and she'd catch it in her mouth. Okay. Now we're down to my dad, Leland. Did you want to go to some of these pictures? Yeah, they're coming up there. Okay. This is S.A. Rogers. I believe that's Winfield in the middle and J. Rogers. That's Hannah and Jay in later years in Ellison Bay. That's Winfield on the left, Clinton on the right. The dog is Teddy. All their dogs were named Teddy. I'm not sure about the rest of it. Leland is on this end. It's backward on here. He's a small one anyway. They're holding up the fish. Some of these pictures I put in to just kind of get an idea of what the buildings were like too. You can go ahead, another one. Okay, there's Jay and Hannah again. This is all the boys. Jay, Winfield, Clinton, and Leland. That's the three, Jay and Hannah's 3 sons, Clinton, Winfield, Leland. That's by the house in Ellison Bay. That's Jay and Hannah. This is Clinton. He got bested. The other guy got a bigger buck. That's Leland. It was a 26-pound carp. He was very proud of that. He shot it with his .22. Okay. And that's Leland. Okay. He was born in 1921, youngest son of Jay and Hannah. Went to school at Wildwood through the 10th grade. He started 11th grade at Gibraltar, but his car broke down, so it was difficult to get there. Plus, they needed him at home, and he didn't like school anyway. Later, he worked for a short time in Milwaukee. He returned to the farm and worked in one of the shipyards during the war. 42, he met a beautiful young woman, Jane Bodine. She had come from Port Wing to pick cherries for a relative. They were married in July of 1943. And Jill just informed me today that it was love at first sight. I'm not sure if it was the black cherry picking hands or just what it was that did it, but
They met across at a dance, and she said that Dad said he saw her and he just fell in love with her immediately. And somewhere they ended up at the Gills Rock dock, but she'd never tell me what ever happened there. So you just don't know. Should I go back? Maybe go back.
you can go.
You're gonna do the first one?
You want there, or do you want the steps first?
You know steps first.
Okay, I was just going to make a mention. This is a photograph of those steps that Father Andre put in. And they, in the 40s, I believe, an Erickson that bought it, that's why it's called Erickson's Point, got so tired of people coming across his property to see that thing that he tore them out, and so they've been gone forever. Okay. Okay.
Is that where we are?
Let's go back. Let's try it.
Okay.
Okay. This is a story, okay? Well, first I'm going to read you about Leland. Then we'll tell the story. Anyway, can you find the gas truck?
Is it this way or that way?
There. Okay. Together they built a successful gas and oil business. In 1959, they purchased a farm at the end of Ranch Lane. At one time, they also owned the mobile station in Fish Creek and had 2 rental cottages in Rowley's Bay. He served on the Liberty Grove Town Board for 10 years and was an active member of the Ellison Bay Men's Club. Now the story can start. Okay. We're in agreement that what this story had to have started within the next 5 minutes after this picture was taken. That's our mother, Jane, and the horse was one owned by Clinton. His name was Sparkplug. And Sparky was quite high-strung. He probably was spooked by something, maybe a car horn or a dog barking or something. He turned around and took off at a dead gallop, heading straight for the barn. Okay, that would be bad enough, except it was much worse than that because the barn door was open. He never even slowed down and went through that barn door. She laid back on his back like this as she went through. Dad knew that her face would be gone when he found her. He went running in, and she was...
Dragged.
Let's go back.
She was dragged with her.
Well, yeah, she fell off the horse, caught her foot in the stirrup, and he dragged her through a manure pile. And so when he found her, she was sitting in the manure pile laughing with her girdle full of, you know what? And that's the story of it. That's the last time she was ever on a horse. Never saw it again. Okay. I'm going to try one more story on you. I don't know how many, probably almost nobody in here has got much to do with horses. But I've got to tell you about him a little bit before we start this particular story. A horse can only, if he's standing, can only lift one leg. The other three have to be on the ground or it'll tip over. With that in mind, there's a thing back here I saw of the different blacksmiths that were in the blacksmith shop in the corner in Ellison Bay. And the last one was a fellow named Fred Ridings. Fred Ridings. He's mentioned in a lot of my grandparents' journals. He was in business about that time. He did horsework, and he also, when automobiles got more popular, he got into fixing cars too and stuff. So about every other time they went to Ellison Bay, they had to go to Fred and have something fixed on their car. Okay, this was a horse thing though. He was, and I'll just call this Farmer Emil because I don't have a better name. But he came to Fred with his horse to have its hoof trimmed. And so he's holding on to the horse. Fred goes around to the back leg, starts lifting it up, and the horse jumps and fusses and has to drop the leg. Try it again, same thing. That horse, just that spoiled horse, jumping around and whatnot, and couldn't hang on to her. Third time, he's getting a little upset. And after she jumped, he took his hoof rasp and hit her one across the rump. And Emil looked at her, and he took a hold of her halter, and he petted her, and he said, "Oh, poor Nancy. Nancy wanted a little sugar," and he reached in his pocket and got a sugar lump for her. Well, it happened again, and he reached in his pocket, gave her a sugar lump. The next time, it just happened that when she was dancing around, she landed right on Emil's foot with her hoof. At the same time, Fred got a hold of that other hoof, and he pulled it up between his knees, and he locked it in there. And he turned around and he said, "Now, God damn it, give Nancy some sugar." And of course, Emil was standing there with 500 pounds of horse on his foot. He did let it up, though, I guess. Anyhow, that's... if we can turn some lights on, and I could show you some of the things that we've got here to... Did you have something yet?
No, I was just wondering.
We good?
I think so.
Oh, I was going to go over... That's all right. We got that.
Oh, you got that.
Oh, yeah. Turn the lights off again for just a second. We were just going to show you some pictures, and I thought we were done.
Oh, no.
Maybe we are done.
Maybe we are done. I'm trying. Oops. Shoot. Rogers. Let me try that. I don't know.
Okay. Pretend you saw them. There were some cool pictures of a threshing crew down there.
I'm sorry. I think I could. It's up here. There we go.
There. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I know, I just.
this was quite an event back in those days. It was as much a social event as it was a work thing. But
Here.
that's a trophy snake.
From Rowley's Bay.
This is, I think, is some of the Norris kids. That's the cottage. We actually own that cottage now, but it was right next to that, right across from where the wagon trail is. This would be waiting for a ferry. Just a little bus. And this, that's the Ramona. That's the Johnson brothers and fish in Billy's Gills. They live in Gills Rock, but they fished out of Sand Bay. And I put that in there. They were Werner in particular, which is, you got an arrow on here?
He's right.
I could do it.
He's right here, isn't he?
Okay, that's Werner. He and his wife Edna were very close friends to my mom and dad. And sometime if I had a cocktail with you, I'll tell you about a trip across Lake Michigan in the Ramona, but not now. Okay, and I think that is the end of them. You want to show those two? Oh, yeah. Yeah, lights again. Yeah.
You might as well just stand.
Okay. This, in the summertime, on a hot day, these horses would work all day in that hot sun. They'd come home at night, and they would take them out for a swim in Rowley's Bay, and that's what's going on here. You can see, I think that's probably my dad between those two, and the other ones are waiting to go in. But Dad was telling about when they would do that, a lot of times they'd ride them out into the water. It's very shallow right there, but it gets deep after you go out a little further. And when they got to the point where their feet weren't touching bottom anymore, they'd start to swim. And he said they were such powerful swimmers that you couldn't hang on. You had to get back, and then they'd grab their tail and just go along with them. Are we good? Yeah, that's the threshing one.
Yeah.
I just put this in here because of the show what the buildings were like. That's kind of the backyard. I believe the house is up on the upper left, and this would be the store that's right close by. Oh yeah, we can't forget about him, can we? Uncle Clinton built this tractor out of, I think, 3 other trucks and parts, put them all together. And they actually used it on the farm. And my first memory of it was, I think there was a cherry crate sitting on there that I could sit on, and Dad had me out. We were working up a garden. And it backfired and it set the grass on fire. And so I went running up, and at that time we ran water like this. And pumped about a half a bucket and ran back, but he had it out by the time he got there. Okay? Later, this was after we had the farm on Ranch Lane there. Dad was cleaning out a barn. We had an old Ford tractor with a loader on it and a little manure spreader. And he had to put the manure spreader on a block to hold it up, and then he would have to load it with a wagon. Then go back, and it was really hard to get it rehooked up again then. And he was thinking if he only had another tractor. And then he remembered this one sitting up in the woods. So he went up, hooked the chain on it, and dragged it down, pulled it out in front of the garage, and thought he'd see it. He figured the motor would probably be frozen where it wouldn't even turn over. And he put the crank in, grabbed it, gave it a pull, it started. And there was gas in it, and it was in gear. He barely got out of the way when it went through and splintered the garage door. And I don't think we ever used it after that. That's just, I think that's our dad on the big horse, and it was a colt and Teddy. Okay, the Mink River Club. The Mink River Club, they built a log lodge. It's right next door to where our cottage is now. And this is them. There was a group of professional men from Sturgeon Bay, I think, that built it. And obviously they caught a lot of fish. Did it? That's it. This for sure. Okay. 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 Thank you. Oh, I'll start over here and just work my way around and explain some of these things to you. This was the sash off Dr. Boy's Army uniform. That's kind of cool. And this is the arrowheads. There's a couple of petrified clams in here, a couple of spearheads, some things I don't know what they're for. I think these are kind of like knives or scrapers. I'm not 100% sure they came off the farm in Rowley's Bay, but I kind of think they did. I looked up a little thing on Google where you can compare, and it came out saying that these two here were probably used for hunting mastodons. They're very old anyway. I don't know about she has brought those in, but there are volumes and volumes of information on business records and stuff like that from Rowley Bay. Okay. This was my grandmother Hannah. That was her camera. Narcoon safe light and stuff. These are printing plates. You lay the film in there and then put the paper over it and shine a light on it, and you got a picture. Develop them in those trays. This, we told you about that. Okay, the farm, Freeman's farm, these would have come from there. These are musket balls. This is a piece of shrapnel. That's a part of a cannonball that's blown up. This, here's what we can tell is a meteorite. It's just in the vault. This is stuff that we just found, in my parents' boxes. That's a grape shot. And let's see, these right here are mini balls. Those are the most common bullet used in the Civil War. There's a handful of those. I'm sure Dr. Boyce picked those up on the battlefield, or maybe took them out of some unfortunate soldier. And some other things, like these are just artifacts that came out of the battlefield. This cool tool, that's a log scale. And you just go along and hook that on the end of the scale and find out how big it is, and it'll tell you how many board feet are in that log. I actually use that, and it's very accurate. Is that all we have?
I don't know. Did you have a surgeon's tools or something? Did you have a lance or a surgeon's tool or something?
Oh, yeah, I was going to show that. Don't tell me it's not in here. Yeah, I don't know why. It must have been just, oh, here. Yes. Yes. What is that called? I think it's a lancet tool. Lancet. Yeah. Anyway, what it's for is for drawing blood from when they used to let blood to cure things. It's kind of a scary thing as far as I'm concerned. Okay, that's all we got. Yes. Oh, yeah.
I have an old map, and it shows the wide part at the head of Mink River is labeled Rogers Lake.
That's correct.
Okay, is that accessible by any trails?
Depends on the depth of the water you can get to it if the water's high, with a canoe or something.
I see, okay.
And,
But no land trails?
On foot, no.
Yeah. The
The closest you can get is where that fishing camp was, at Holy's Lagoons.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
You want another quick story?
Why not?
Were you talking about that place? This is, actually, it was the first year I moved back here. I was into kayaking. And I kayaked way up and through Rogers Lake, and there are 3 creeks that come down through there. And I know from experience and from being told, warned, that there's no bottom out there. It's just, you stick a paddle or something, just keep going down in mud. Okay, so I'm paddling this little creek, just see where I could go. I got down, and all of a sudden I realized the creek was only about this wide. I started out with about as wide as that table. And I'm thinking, now, this isn't going to be easy. And it was very hard to back up. So I thought, well, I'll see what's ahead. Got up and there was a little eddy. And it was just big enough that I could get the kayak almost around. Didn't quite make it. And just to try, I did just stick my paddle in there. It looked like a gravel bed, and I just went right through it. Oh my, I'm in trouble. I kept back and forth. Finally, I got it. Paddled back out. I got back out in the marsh, big tall weeds. And I came out of a little opening, and here was a boat and a couple in there that really didn't want anybody else in that. So I paddled right out of it. Okay.
That's what we're
Anybody else have one? Yes.
So how many Rogers are still in the Ellison Bay Raleigh area?
I'm hearing is really bad.
How many Rogers families are still in the Ellison Bay and Raleigh's Bay area?
There are us.
Where are you from?
Well, so there'd be.
Where are you from?
You're in Utah, okay. We gotta get together sometime, okay, so
Brenda's in
and
Ellison Bay.
Debbie
Yep.
is from Rogers, but you have a cottage up here?
I have a house up in Ellison Bay.
Mhm.
Down the road.
And then Mary, her cousin, has a cottage up in Appleport. I think that's all. Yes?
How long did it keep the 4,000 acres?
I think he started selling it almost right away.
Okay, so.
Because that's how he got the logging done. There were immigrants, people looking for work, and they would work cutting timber, and then they'd get to keep a certain, like the 40 acres for putting in so much work. And that's where all these little farms got started up here initially. Any other questions? Yes?
You know, when I was a kid, this was before the resort was built. It was Casa Grande's, and we would go behind the farm there, and that's where we would get arrowheads. And it was almost like a dune back in there. And we'd also find bones from cows or whatever animals that they had, but that's where we would find the
I was going to show pictures of that.
Yeah.
Area because when we were kids, that was like having the world's biggest sandbox.
We would try to hide from old lady Casa Grande or whoever it was.
You are.
And some Erickson over across the bay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
All the years that, I went out there with my dad, out in the resort, I never found an arrowhead.
I never found one.
But it's just a little more than what's up there. There are some spirits too.
Yeah.
Those steps, I have all the paperwork. They tried to condemn the property.
Was that it?
Grandfather Erickson. And that was supposedly where the Jesuit priests, when they landed, they hit that area, and then they put the steps in because they could memorialize. And when he bought the property,